Welcome you all to a global initiative a day with FMZ, where we're going to talk about leadership series to bring in insights from the leaders across the globe. And we also have education series. And today we have Maureen, a global leader, to talk about sustainability and also our thought process in how do we drive it forward. And I have my co-host Lisa. Welcome, Lisa, and over to you.
Thank you. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us. You have been one of the principal contributors of content for the IFMA sustainability courses, and you've made teaching about sustainability a priority. What is the primary message that you're hoping to deliver to FMs worldwide?
Thank you, Lisa. I'm happy to be here today. I would say the primary message is that facility management is a green job, that it is a sustainable workplace, it is a sustainable career. And as we think about how we run facilities, thinking about everything we do on the day-to-day to make sure HVAC is working and we've got the right lighting levels, all of those things play a significant role in the building's impact on the environment. So anyone from the electrician to the boiler operator to the facility manager all plays a role in managing their facility efficiently, and then big picture overall with the how we're impacting sustainability across the world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. And if you look at if they're not committed to sustainability, I think still it is in the preliminary stage. I would say I think most of them adopted by choice. Now ESG being becoming more of a global mandate where companies are looking at. What is the primary message that you are hoping to deliver for facility managers, uh, those who are not yet started? What is that you want to deliver to them?
It's kind of a similar message to just start thinking about the day-to-day and how you run your facility, and thinking about making sure you're doing all of your preventative maintenance. Some of the basics we learn about and that are the core to facility management, really do impact that efficiency. There's a concept in the United States developed, fine-tuned by the Department of Energy, called building retuning. And it's really a concept to say, let's go back to the basics. Let's look at our day-to-day operations, how we run facilities. Let's look at our temperature settings and things that are, simple, that we can do without a lot of capital investment, without a lot of money. And that can be a way that somebody whose organization maybe isn't as committed to sustainability can just start. And then you start to show your leadership, look, we're saving energy and we're saving money. We're saving water, we're decreasing our consumption, and start to bring them on board that way. And that way you're really getting the best of both worlds. You're being an effective facility manager, and we can actually, have a good impact on the environment.
Thank you, Maureen. I think it gives a direction. One is, I think, how we can start with the small initiatives and how do we drive it big. I think one is to create awareness. Second thing is to also ensure that our organization understand that these initiatives yield a result, so that then when you build a business case, you already have a proven results which you can show it up.
Yeah, the idea of a champion is a really good idea there. If you don't have the leadership commitment, that this can be kind of a grounds up movement, and facilities and facility management is really well positioned to be that champion because of the major impact that they play.
Fabulous. Sustainability is a huge thing, and it's got such global attention. The United Nations has set sustainability goals to get us to think globally, but to act locally. So it's the concept of it's going to take the contributions of so many people. What tips would you offer for facility managers to take their organizations along that path?
Yeah, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a really good framework for thinking broadly about sustainability. And when you look at them, it can be very daunting in facility management to think that you play a role in this because they're broad. You know, there are things that are very specific to facilities like climate action and, you know, sustainable cities. But there are also things like ending hunger and equity, gender equity across the world. And so when we think about our organization's sustainability goals, it's important for us to think about things on a global level, that we are part of a larger community. You know, we're part of the community in our neighborhood, we're part of our country, but we're also part of the world. And we can start thinking about those impacts. And sometimes it does get daunting as facilities to think about that. Well, how can I play a role in such a big, you know, these major goals? And really, when you start to think about it, there are very specific ways we can play a role. Like I mentioned, some of the goals are related to sustainable cities and, you know, how we purchase our electricity. Are we using renewables? Everything we do in our building on that day to day to decrease energy consumption, we're also decreasing our carbon footprint. We're decreasing greenhouse gases. And that's important. That's, you know, that's the global impact. So I really do think if we start to think broader and recognize that there is this global issue and think about how we in facility management play a role, I think we'll start to see that we are part of the bigger picture.
Excellent. I really love that those goals include things that go into social equity, because so much of what we do regarding sustainability, we don't think of that broadly, but it is that great of an impact. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I think you touched a very interesting thing about diversity and inclusivity. I think it's not just local, but you also need to look at global perspective, that how do we tie things. I think that's very, very important, and bringing diversity, inclusivity, and most of the companies are committing towards that. And now I think most of them have declared carbon neutral or net zero. I think most of the companies are also moving into alternate energy sources. They're actually becoming grid zero. So when you talk about carbon, like the task of reducing carbon enough to make a difference seems daunting. What advice do you have for a facility managers about the path to carbon neutrality?
Is that every impact matters. Even if your impact is small, that plays a role, right? That is decreasing overall. And while we, you know, in facilities, maybe our impact is small, when you think globally, you know, we're not a coal-fired power plant, so us decreasing isn't going to have as much an impact, but just think that every impact is important. Every reduction is important. Every act we take to not throw food away and provide it to people who need it is important. I think that's a good way to think about it, that it's not a small effort just because it's small, that it, you know, is part of that bigger community. And I think people do often think that, well, you know, I'm just one person, whether I recycle or not doesn't matter. And if everybody thought that way, then, you know, we'd be in a much bigger problem. So we all just kind of need to think about that. Whatever we do is important, even if it's small.
I think you well covered. I think along with CSR, I keep talking about people. It's there is something called as ISR, individual social responsibility. The corporate is one is a bigger umbrella. We do activities. So as an individual, are we really adopting in our day to day? Like maybe we are doing it offices. Are we really doing it back when we go back home in our community or locality? And individual social responsibility is also very, very important. And we've been talking about reduction is not just a social responsibility, it is also our moral responsibility, that we leave this nature for our future, right? So you very well covered and summarized. So if you want to say a few words again to summarize.
Yeah, there's a story that comes to mind. It's kind of I think, a fable that's been modified over the years and everything. I always call it the starfish story. And I used to have a poster of it on my wall growing up as a kid. And it's this story that there's a young boy walking along the beach, and there's starfish that are just stranded all over the beach. And he starts to pick them up and put them back into the water. And an old man comes by and he says, "What are you doing? Do you see how many starfish there are? There's no way you can help all of them." And he picks one up, he puts it back in the sea, and he says, "Well, I just helped that one." And it's that idea that, okay, maybe you can't save all of them, but saving one is a good thing. It's helpful. And then I always kind of like to think about that and say, well, what if that boy, thinking of where we are now, went on the internet, went on social media and got all his friends there, and then they brought their parents and everybody, then you have a much bigger chance of saving them all. So it's kind of that, what Lisa said earlier, you act individually, you act locally, and maybe build to get to that community level and then to the global level. That every little bit does help.
Yes,
What
I
a
think
great
that's.
tie-in. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So there was one case study where an organization did. They typically used to import a lot of furniture. So they did an analysis of what is the transportation, what is the distance. They used to import from, I think, Malaysia. They did a calculation of packaging, then airlift, transportation, then again local transportation. Then they sourced the local vendor who were able to do the same kind of quality for them. So they calculated the carbon emission and how they can contribute to that. What I'm talking about is you also need to think locally when you're procuring some goods that they where you have a major stake in reducing the carbon footprint. I think they were able to reduce, I think, 30 to 40% of that when they started sourcing things locally. And these are the some of things or innovations the organizations are looking at. One is we need to be global and also need to look at a local standpoint that what all we can support an ecosystem or create an ecosystem for our own consumption is going to be contributing a lot to reduce carbon emission.
Right.
So I think thank you, Maureen, for your time, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank
You've been
you.
a great host, and thank you, Maureen, for taking out time. I think we'll do more of this series because sustainability has become one of the key factor. Again, as I said, it's a social responsibility and also moral responsibility for all of us to contribute apart from the corporates. And thank you all again, and keep watching us. Stay tuned.
Thanks.